So tonight's topic is where is gold in Virginia? Been requested for months. So this whole series has been based on the use of some techniques that I outline in this report called Government Gold Maps, or how to find gold using the USGS. It covers more than that, and you'll see that in a second, because you can customize the maps to suit your needs. There's also a few other fun things that maybe I'll get to in the next few episodes. There are fun things having to do with how to use these maps from within Google Earth. And what you can do with that is create this environment that allows you to, and that's part of what I'm going to be teaching you, is how to look at the geology and topology of the region and the topographic features and figure out what they tell you about the history of that locality and what it might mean to finding gold. Because that's the important aspect of any one of these things, isn't just to go use the MRIDS. Anybody can do that. The idea is use it how. It's a tool, but there's many ways of using that tool. And so what I go through is kind of an outline of how to get started, also how to customize your own maps, and there's some more features that we'll be working on to kind of get out to you. But the objective is to show you how to use these maps in the context of locating their first traces of gold, but also looking and studying the history and the geology of the region. Both historicity in terms of the recovery of gold, as well as what kind of rocks and things are in the area, what mountains, what kind of orogenic activity or fissures or faults might be in the area, that kind of fun stuff, as well as using topographic maps. So let's just go right to it. Let's take a look at what is out there. So you can find the link below for where to get your Government Gold Map report. That's just a kind of starter thing. Take a look at this picture. What I've got is a shot showing Virginia and giving you a trace through Virginia. Remember we started talking about how the Appalachians, that's these ripples you see here. Let me zoom in a little bit on them and you'll get a feel for what's going on here. But this is Virginia. And when we zoom in, you can see the ripples of these old mountains that are now hills, but they're steep hills. And what's happened is because they've eroded the way they have left behind a legacy of gold, from placer gold to lode that was uncovered by the tearing down of these mountains. So when the fissures move through, let me see if I can find. So now these fissures come through the region, and in the uplifting of the mountains, they split and crack and so forth through various faults that form and inject hydrothermal deposits that bear metals and minerals that go with metals. Now the objective is eventually that stuff gets eroded down by water and weathering and redeposits in placer deposits. These are the chunks of lode that get worn out of the quartz or other lode-bearing material and worn down until all you have are the little gold particles that you see all the way up to nuggets, full-size nuggets. Now, the older it gets, the more worn they get. The less large stones are left, the less large nuggets are left. It kind of stands to weather. But it's up to weather as to whether or not the gold is left behind is very large. In this area, it typically is not that large. And so a large nugget here might be, a size of a dime or so. Whereas on the West Coast, you might see something the size of a good-sized nugget might be an inch or two. And sometimes even bigger, but typically more of like an inch or two. Alaska, you might see something quite large. And in Australia, you might see something huge. It just goes with how much weathering's been going on and what is left and where it deposited the final residues, whether they've been hit with lots of torrents of hurricanes every couple of years or it's fairly desert-like and pretty dormant. So in this case, you can see these the Appalachian region, and you can see these markers showing where the gold prospects were. Now, one of the things about these are kind of customized versions, and they kind of a mixed and match thing. They don't have the information tacked on them. That's partly because of how they got customized. So I'm going to try something right now. We're going to reload this and see if we can't generate a more interesting image of Virginia, because when I loaded it initially, I got a different kind of a picture. The problem is that when you reload these things, if there are customizations involved, they overlap, and that becomes problematic. And in the show, I can't really go into the customization process. I show you that in the report, but in here, it's kind of gotten a customization I put in for a video I did 2 or 3 years ago. So let's just remove this particular resource. Yes. And now what I'm going to do is go over to my browser and pull down the MRDS data that I have, which is in a KMZ format. And again, it's going to reload without any of the colors and customizations. But you can see how even with that, it came up a little different in Virginia. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but notice these ones are more like what we've been seeing in the last few nights. And you can see how it has information about the actual prospect. And if I click on one of these things, let's expand it, and click on one of these, I get the data that we're used to seeing. So I can see right here, we have what looks like copper, arsenic, gold, and zinc. Well, that's kind of an arsenopyrite mix. Could be copper pyrite, chalcopyrite, and arsenopyrites. Gold can mix in kind of a mixture of these two things. Let me make sure I'm transmitting the right things. So gold can mix in a solution, if you will, of these various things: the copper, the arsenic, the gold, and the zinc. And so as I zoom in, it doesn't zoom in on this thing, so we'll just kind of bear with me for a moment here. Let's go back in here. So copper, arsenic, gold, and zinc. So this is just an occurrence. There isn't really much information in terms of any productivity or production. There is information about where it was. Camp Kiwaniana. No, I'm doing it again. Someone else can pronounce this, please. So that's the way that works. Here's another one. This has galena, which is a lead ore, lead sulfide, gold, molybdenite, pyrrhotite, and it has some low sulfide gold quartz veins. So again, we're starting to look like we have kind of a mixture of gold, and we have some pyrites, probably chalcopyrites, mixed together. All this looks like it has galena, so that means they have some kind of lead mix going on. And then there's iron, pig iron, lead, and molybdenum. So there's some pretty interesting stuff going on in that prospect. The major occurrence is gold molybdenite. You know, that's where the gold is coming from. The commodity number one coming out of this prospect is gold. So there you have it. We can go on over here toward Lynchburg and see if there's some stuff. These typically, let's see if they have enough information in them. Yes, they do. So now we have, see, past producer, ore is gold. The mode is low sulfide. Here we go again, sulfides, gold. So a lot of these are coming in these sulfide ores. That looks like this. Let me blow up me. So that looks kind of like this thing here. And if you look on the back side, you can see these, you know, sparkly, you know, this is, you know, typically we would call this leverite in most cases, but in this particular case, this particular sulfide ore, which is chalcopyrite, you see kind of rainbow colored, it's a rainbow pyrite. They can come in almost purple, you know, so they vary based on the mixture of different things that are in with the copper and the sulfur that forms the chalcopyrite, in this case gold. And so you'll typically find that they have a significant amount of value per ton as an ore. And that's largely what you're seeing show up here in Virginia in these various mines that we've shown so far. And that is, you know, here we go, low sulfide copper quartz vein. So it's that same kind of material plus some quartz in a quartz vein type structure. So again, we're seeing that same thing we saw before. If I back up on Virginia, You can see this southeast to southwest to northeast trend that follows the mountains here, which are really hills, but it's the Appalachian, Smoky Mountains range kind of thing. And we have DJ Myers prospect up here. Primary occurrence is gold. We have all the way up, you can see this thing has a trend to go through Washington, D.C. and on into Baltimore. And, I didn't show that on this map, but it does. If people want to know where mine for gold in Washington, D.C., maybe we'll do that one as a special. But I wouldn't try it because they think you're looking for, a certain fort. So this is low sulfide gold quartz vein on this one. So the pattern over and over again, these sulfide ores that come from the kind of metamorphic / igneous erosion products that happened when these mountains were built up, injected, and then torn down. And so again, over and over again, you see this pattern. You either get gold or you get some kind of a gold copper ore. Down here, let's see, Danville, Kentuck, low sulfide, gold quartz vein. So here we go again. Anytime you see sulfide, think pyrites. Now, of course, everybody tells you pyrites are fool's gold. Well, they mostly are, but there are some combinations that are well worth investing in to find out if they have the right mix and that there's a concentration enough gold to be worth the energy to extract it from the pyrites. And that depends on the type of pyrite. Low sulfide. Notice these are low sulfide, not high sulfide. So, it's just important to kind of keep an eye on the sulfur ratio. This is quartz vein, has gold, and it has copper. Here we go again. So all through this region is this kind of picture. Let's go right up here to Bull Run occurrence they have up here. Let's see, where was that? Fairfax, Bull Run occurrence. So unknown occurrence, ore is gold, placer, gold. So this is a placer deposit. Primary commodity is gold. So there you go. We pull up our data sheet like we always do. And we see the locations and all that stuff. And then we see it's in Fairfax, Virginia, right outside Washington, D.C. Likely to be on private property, so you really shouldn't be going in there. Be careful on these things. Always check because you have to cross-reference between what we're talking about here, which is the occurrence, the geology, and the legal ownership. And those three things form your triad to do your initial research. If you can get the right finds nearby, the right geology and rocks and minerals nearby, and access, then you're in. If you can't get any one of those three, you're out. And especially that access. You don't want to be messing around claim jumping or going onto people's private property to prospect, even if you're just taking a gold pan. People don't take a liking to that stuff, especially if there's a good find. So that's this one, placer, gold, PGE. The reporter was Sweet Palmer. And here's the reference material, sometimes worth checking out. This one was a 1985 edition of Sweet and Lovett, Gold Mines and Prospects and Occurrences of Virginia. There's a book to go hunt down. Oftentimes these things will be out of print, but I would not expect, since this was published in 1985, that it's missing. You could probably find it on the web as a PDF. It's the Maryland Geological Survey educational series. So there you go. And that's a lot of what I do is I kind of bounce back and forth between the different maps and the different resources that you can pull up for a given location. And then what I'll do is I'll use that as a means to do further research, dig deeper. And all that from my armchair without getting my feet wet. Because the next step is going to be to go out there and get your feet wet. But you first need to do some research to find out what's available, find out what other prospects or other claim areas in the area are available. And in the West, that would be primarily through the BLM or the Forest Service. getting a little tricky with both of those guys. They're getting kind of funny about how they release information, but it's still available. You still have a right to mine under the 1872 mining law, and so you just need to push that. Now, you mine when you go in. You don't go in as a recreational prospector. That gets you almost nowhere unless it's on an open recreational sites, which are typically very picked over. What you want to do is go in as a professional or a semi-professional prospector. You basically want to go in laying claim under the 1872 mining law as a prospector for valuable minerals and for staking a claim to eventually perfect into what's called a patented claim. That's real property that has real value, etc. And so for now, you just want to go do the research. That's what we're up to right now. So that's it for tonight. You can see we got Manassas, all these famous places from the Civil War. Here's Washington, D.C. Let's see if we can see the closest prospect to Washington from the Maryland side. Bull Neck, low sulfide, quartz vein, gold, and silver. Here we got some silver in this one. So that's it for tonight. Good prospecting. Prospector Jess just wanted to check in with you and show you what is found in Virginia and how you can, kind of get a scope of what's going on here. Like I said, southwest to northeast, same trend line we saw when we went up through South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia. South of Georgia, things start to peter out pretty heavily, and you can see some of that because if we look closely at the geology of this region, you notice this mountain range kind of comes along, Chattanooga, Birmingham, Huntsville up here, Birmingham down here, and in this region, this whole thing starts to peter out. Well, so does the gold, interestingly enough. And so typically, I have a lot of people asking me, is there gold in Mississippi? Is there gold in Arkansas and Missouri? And the answer is not so much. More in the fine gold, flour gold, and flood gold. Not this kind of stuff where you're finding nuggets or lodes. So that's just a tip for the future. I'm going to go cover all of that eventually because still people are interested, and there are occurrences in places even in Missouri, but it's going to be in the southeast of Missouri and not much anywhere else. Anything you would find that was from flooding that was occurring from the Mississippi River is going to be as fine can be because it's going to be from glacial till and winter floods. And so it's not going to be, and it's going to be widely distributed, so it's not going to be very concentrated, very hard to find. Good practice for finding fine gold, though. So you should do it. In fact, I recommend people just do that just to practice gold panning, period. Because when you are able to gold pan and get fine gold out, you'll get anything when you go to a place that's rich. So that's just a tip. And that's it for tonight. Good prospecting, and I just wanted to touch bases with you. Tonight's thing was looking at where is gold in Virginia, and specifically how to use the government gold maps report that I have in the USGS MRDS to integrate with Google Earth and produce your own custom maps. So that's what we're all about, and that's one more pointer for Virginia. We got one more state in our arsenal. So go out there and find some gold and have a good weekend. See you tomorrow night. Prospector Jess over now.